Cellular intake of glucose is tightly regulated. The body prioritizes some tissues over others. There are 5 main glucose transporters called GLUT 1 through 5. GLUT 4 is an insulin-responsive transporter, meaning that its activity, even its presence on cell membranes, is determined by the binding of insulin to its receptor. Compared to GLUT 3, GLUT 4 has a moderate affinity for its substrate glucose. This is because the muscle and adipose cells, which GLUT 4 is commonly found on, should not be taking up all the body's glucose. There are some more important tissues, like the brain, that are first in line for any glucose the body takes in. So their glucose transporter, GLUT 3, has a higher affinity.
Insulin is secreted by the beta cells of the pancreas in response to high blood glucose, and it is the hormone that helps increase the cellular uptake of glucose for later storage as glycogen. In this picture, insulin is not bound to the receptor protein. GLUT 4 remains tucked away inside the cell in a vesicle called GLUT 4 storage vesicle, or GSV.
In this image, insulin is bound to the receptor protein. The binding of insulin triggers a conformational change in the receptor protein, which in turn triggers a series of intercellular reactions. These reactions then cause the translocation or migration of the GSVs to the surface. Once on the surface, the vesicles fuse with the existing cellular membranes in a process called endocytosis. At last, we have our desired GLUT 4 receptors on the surface of the target cell. Now that GLUT 4 is present, glucose is able to be taken in by the muscle, adipose tissue, and heart cells for immediate use or later storage as glycogen.
When insulin is no longer bound to its receptor, GLUT 4 retreats back into the GSVs where it originated from and are no longer found on the surface of the cell. The effect is that glucose uptake by the cell is diminished. In summary, GLUT 4 is the major insulin-responsive glucose transporter. In response to insulin, the GSVs translocate to the membrane surface, and GLUT 4 can transport glucose back into the cell. When insulin is no longer bound, GLUT 4 returns to the GSVs and retreats back into the cell. The advantage of having an insulin-sensitive glucose transporter like GLUT 4 is that the body can precisely control the amount of glucose intake by certain cells.